a wooden box, two small skeletons, and the kind of silence that screams louder than any confession. In 1674, workers inside the Tower of London uncovered a hidden chest beneath a staircase, an unassuming box that seemed to hold nothing but dust and old bones. But those bones belonged to two children who, centuries earlier, had been the most dangerous boys in England, rightful contenders for the throne. The discovery didn't close the case, it detonated it, because the tower wasn't just a fortress. It was a political machine, one that could swallow a prince and spit out a king. Imagine it, the nation grieving, the crown wobbling, and two brothers, Edward V, only 12, and his younger brother vanishing behind stone walls that had witnessed vows, betrayals, and executions. They entered as royal children. They never emerged as anything at all. No public trial, no body, no farewell. Only rumors that spread like smoke through London, muffled cries at night, barred windows, footsteps that stopped too soon. And here is what makes the story unbearable. Whoever controlled those boys controlled the future. Their disappearance wasn't just a tragedy, it was a master key. It unlocked a new reign, rewrote loyalties, and stained reputations for centuries. Was it their uncle, Richard III, branded a villain by history and theater alike? Or did the truth get buried under a Tudor solution convenient enough to become official? That small wooden box forces one question that still chills historians today. If these were the princes, then who decided they would become evidence instead of heirs? Less than a month after inheriting the throne, 12-year-old Edward V entered the Tower of London. His younger brother soon joined him. Neither boy was ever seen outside its walls again, and their disappearance remains one of England's most haunting mysteries. On April 9, 1483, King Edward IV died suddenly, just short of his 41st birthday. His heir, Edward, Prince of Wales, was only 12. In his will, Edward IV named his brother Richard, Duke of Gloucester, protector of the realm, a role meant to safeguard the young king and keep the country stable until the coronation. But stability was fragile. For nearly 3 decades, England had been scarred by civil war between the House of York, the White Rose, and the House of Lancaster, the Red Rose, a bitter struggle later romanticized as the Wars of the Roses. Edward IV, champion of York, had seized and defended his crown in a turbulent age. He likely knew that his son's youth would invite challengers. Richard of Gloucester had built a reputation as a disciplined soldier and loyal brother. He had even sworn fealty to the young Prince of Wales. Yet when the throne suddenly lacked an adult king, Richard moved swiftly to take control. On April 29, he intercepted the party escorting Edward to London, arrested Edward's maternal uncle who had been leading the entourage, and personally accompanied his nephew to the capital. The coronation, originally scheduled for May 4, was postponed to June 22, while the boy king was lodged in the royal apartments within the Tower of London, then used as a secure royal residence as well as a prison. Edward IV's widow, Elizabeth Woodville, alarmed by Richard's growing power, fled to sanctuary in Westminster Abbey with her younger children. In mid-June, the protector persuaded her to surrender her 9-year-old son, Richard, Duke of York, claiming Edward was lonely and needed his brother as a companion in the tower. Then the ground shifted beneath the nation. On the very Sunday that would have been Edward V's coronation day, his right to the throne was publicly undermined. A Cambridge theologian, Dr. Ralph Shaw, preached outside St. Paul's Cathedral, arguing that Edward IV had been previously betrothed before marrying Elizabeth Woodville. If true under the law of the time, the marriage would be invalid and their children, including Edward V, illegitimate. 2 days later, one of Richard's most committed supporters repeated the claim before London's leading citizens, ending with the ominous warning, "Woe is the realm that has a child to their king." After a brief show of reluctance, the Duke of Gloucester accepted the crown. On June 26, 1483, he was proclaimed Richard III. Edward V's reign on paper had lasted less than 3 months, accused Richard III. Through July, Edward V, now cruelly mocked by some as Edward Bastard, and his brother were occasionally seen playing in the Tower yards. But then, according to one contemporary witness, they were moved deeper inside. They appeared less and less behind barred windows until at length they ceased to appear altogether. By autumn 1483, rumors hardened into near certainty across London. The princes had been murdered in the Tower. The question that echoed through taverns, courts, and foreign capitals was simple and deadly: by whom? In January 1484, the French chancellor, warning of the dangers of a child King Francis Charles VIII was only 14, stated bluntly that Edward IV's sons had been killed by their uncle and the crown had passed to an assassin. Meanwhile, Elizabeth Woodville allied herself with Richard's enemies. She offered her eldest daughter in marriage to the Lancastrian claimant Henry Tudor, binding Yorkist blood to a Lancaster cause. In August 1485, Richard III met Henry Tudor at Bosworth Field. At a critical moment, one of Richard's supporters defected. Richard was killed in the fighting. The victor was crowned Henry VII, and the Wars of the Roses effectively ended. England was about to enter the Tudor era. But the prince's shadow did not vanish with Richard. Henry VII now faced unnerving stories that the boys were alive living claimants who could ignite rebellion. Over time, an official narrative took hold that on Richard's orders, the princes had been smothered beneath feather mattresses and buried beneath stones at the foot of a staircase within the tower. A convenient scapegoat emerged. Sir James Tyrrell executed for unspecified treason in May 1502. Only later did word spread that he had confessed to murdering the princes before his beheading. The story was absorbed into popular history through Sir Thomas More's account of Richard III published in 1534 and later amplified for the stage by Shakespeare. Belated burial. In 1674, nearly 2 centuries after the prince's disappearance, workmen at the tower found a wooden box containing the skeletons of 2 children. The bones were accepted as those of Edward V and his brother and were interred in Westminster Abbey. In 1933, medical experts examined the remains. Their conclusion: the skeletons were consistent with boys of the prince's ages at the time they vanished. The cause of death could not be determined. The elder boy's jaw showed significant deterioration, possibly linked to a serious dental problem. One of Edward V's last recorded visitors in the tower had been a royal physician summoned to treat a toothache. A chilling report survives from that period. The boy king had been praying and doing penance daily, seemingly convinced he would die. He is said to have lamented, "Alas, I would my uncle would let me have my life yet, though I lose my kingdom." Shakespeare's villain. Richard II's reign was brief, but his reputation became immortal and contested. Across centuries, scholars have alternately portrayed him as a heroic warrior king or a ruthless usurper. In the modern era, Richard III societies have even formed to defend his name. Yet it is hard to out-argue a masterpiece. Writing in the 1590s, during the reign of Elizabeth I, Shakespeare naturally shaped a version of history that favored the Tudors, especially Elizabeth's grandfather, Henry VII. In Shakespeare's Richard III, Richard becomes a venomous schemer, willing to order the murder of the princes in the tower, then coldly plot marriage to their sister to secure his claim. Even Richard's body was reshaped by the drama. A minor physical asymmetry, one shoulder reportedly higher than the other, grew into the enduring theatrical image of a twisted hunchback, a symbol of moral corruption made flesh. At the play's triumphant conclusion on Bosworth Field, Shakespeare's Henry Tudor declares that the bloody dog is dead and peace can finally return. History, however, is not a stage, and the tower, silent, stone-faced, and unwilling to confess, still keeps its most famous secret. The tower that never stops watching. The Tower of London didn't begin as a museum. It began as a message. After 1066, William the Conqueror needed London to understand one simple truth: the new power was permanent. So he planted a stone fortress on the Thames visible from the river, looming over the city like a clenched fist. At the heart of it rose the White Tower, the original keep, a castle inside a castle, built to intimidate as much as to defend. And then the tower grew teeth. Over the next centuries, it expanded into 3 great enclosures: inner and outer walls, towers, gatehouses, a moat layer upon layer, as if England kept adding locks to a door it never fully trusted. By the time medieval kings were done rebuilding and reinforcing it, the tower wasn't one building at all, but a whole fortified world. That's why its history feels like a list of roles and none of them are gentle. The tower served as royal residence, fortress, arsenal, treasury, and prison. It held weapons and wealth. It held nobles who had fallen out of favor. It held secrets that were never written down because writing them down would be dangerous. And here's the chilling part: the tower doesn't just contain history, it absorbs it. Even today, it's not an empty relic. The tower is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the world's biggest historic attractions, but when the gates close, a small living community remains inside, yeoman warders and their families, the resident governor, and a garrison of soldiers. There's even a doctor, a chaplain, and yes, a pub within the walls. And of course, there are the treasures people line up for, the crown jewels, objects so symbolic that entire eras have been built around them. They glitter behind glass, but they also whisper a warning. Crowns are beautiful, and they are dangerous. So what secrets does the tower still hide? Some are carved into stone, literally. Prisoners left names and messages scratched into walls, proof that fear can become handwriting. Some secrets are architectural, corridors that turn too sharply, staircases that seem to end in the wrong place, rooms that feel like they were designed to keep conversations from escaping. And then there are the secrets that walk on wings. The tower's ravens aren't just tradition, they're treated like living omens. The legend says if the ravens ever leave, the tower and the kingdom will fall. Today, they're cared for by a yeoman warder known as the Raven Master, because in this place, even superstition has a job title. But the greatest secret is still the one you came for, the prince's. Because every stone corridor and locked door leads back to the same question: was the tower a refuge, or a trap? And if it was a trap, who set it? The Tower of London survives because it can do what people cannot. It can keep a straight face forever. It doesn't accuse. It doesn't confess. It simply stands there, watching the river move, as if it's waiting for someone, someday, to finally say the quiet part out loud.